I'm John Arana, and this is Karina San Martin, and we are here at the Drop, dropping truth and bringing life. And we've been talking a little bit about this question that we get asked all the time.
Yes.
People ask us, well, if God's so good, why does bad things happen to good people?
Right, yeah.
Why are there so many little children starving?
Yeah,
You know, why are so many people dying? And it's a good question.
Yeah, right.
And we get it all the time. You know, if God's so good, why doesn't he do something about it? Why does he let that happen? And I think it's a good question, and we started trying to answer it from a biblical worldview, and we said it's really not God, because God's given delegated authority to man here on earth.
Yeah.
And so God is responsible for, man is responsible for what happens on earth.
Yeah.
And so if man is messing up, then things are going to get messed up.
Right. Yeah.
And so we kind of summarize that in John Arana's version there.
So if you missed the previous episode, go catch that one.
That's a great episode.
It's kind of a building block, for this one.
Yeah. But then you brought the point of what the scripture says in 2 Peter chapter 1, that God has given us everything that we need.
That's right.
It's in other words, there should be no lack. You know, and especially for those of us who truly believe in Him, then we receive everything. So there's enough food for the whole world. There's enough resources for the whole world. But it's man that is, ego and selfish and politics and money, greed, and so on and so forth. So it is not God's fault.
That brings the bad things. It's like basically that basic like cause and effect truth, principle that we learn from the time that we're little kids. If you do this, this will happen. If you don't do this, then this won't happen. And I think keeping a good perspective, especially as Christians, and making sure that we're also like promoting a good godly perspective on those things, like just in conversation and with when people share things with you, making sure that you're not saying things like oh well, the Lord is teaching you a lesson here, or the Lord is punishing you. I told you, and I mean, again, there's discipline that the Lord will bring, and we taled about that a few episodes ago. He doesn't punish,
and that has more to do with correction, instead of punishment.
It's more correction.
Punishment is inflicting pain,
the correction
on purpose.
is teaching. It's helping you grow. It's helping you say like, okay, next time let's do this instead. So it's really important to make sure that you're saying things like based on the word and not based on your own personal opinion, or like that in the back of your brain you're like, finally the Lord's teaching them a lesson. Well, those people, they got it coming. You got what you deserve. You know what I mean? And because that, I think that perpetuates the misunderstanding of bad things happening to good people, that God has His hand in that, which He does not.
Absolutely. And there's even a lot of people in church that don't even have a biblical worldview. They have a secular worldview, even though they're in church. Because to say things like that, like, oh, those people, if God doesn't punish them, He's going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what kind of statement is that? That does not reflect the heart of God. But anyhow, so it's not God's doing. It's man who's in charge and of all the resources in the world. And so that brings us to the fact that God's given delegated authority to mankind, and so man has choices.
We do. We have our choices.
And we have to choose. We can choose to do right, or we can choose to do wrong. We can choose to hurt somebody, or we can choose to help somebody. And that brings me to this story in the Bible where God created Adam and Eve, and then He put them in this garden. And there's a great story there because God says that he put all these beautiful trees for food and everything. Yeah. So God's not going to create you and then not provide for you.
Yeah.
But that's a different little piece of information there. Here's the thing. He said, now there's two very special trees in this garden, says the story.
Right.
One is called the tree of life.
Right.
And then the other one is called the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
Okay, so then God says, hey, by the way, Adam, just in case, don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because then you will die. You will experience a spiritual death. And so those two trees represents two different systems. The system of I live a life that depends on God, in relationship with God, versus the tree of knowledge is I live a life based on my opinion, based on my knowledge, based on my perspective, and I disregard God's. And so right there, you realize that God's given mankind a choice, right. You know? Yeah. And unfortunately, Adam and Eve chose the wrong thing.
Right, yeah.
They chose to live a life, hey, even though God said, hey, by the way,
choose life. Choose this one.
Choose that one. Yeah. Don't eat of this one.
Man.
They still did the opposite.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, and a lot of times when people hear this story, they're like, oh, thanks a lot, Eve. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah.
And then I feel like saying, if it wasn't them, it would have been you.
Oh, my gosh. We're all the same. We're all the same. You know,
it's like that humanity, that nature in us that... you know, like it just had to, it's like they just had to see,
right,
you know,
right.
And even this whole like story in my brain sometimes I'm like, you know, and even my husband and I, we've talked about this, you know, like he's been like, why did God put those two trees there? Like if he knew from the beginning of time, like which one we were going to choose, why put both?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I know, right? Like, why not just put the one?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, why not just say, here's the tree of life, live forever. You
Enjoy.
Know? You know, yeah.
Enjoy.
But then, and I've even said like a couple of times, well, then would it really have been our choice, and would we really have had free will?
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, it's just this whole like thing where it's like, God did want us to understand that we had the choice.
That's right.
You know, and so we had the choice, and he allowed us to choose.
Exactly.
Because he didn't want to create a being that only did what he controlled them to do. You know,
he created a being like him. With the power to create and the power to choose.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And so again, like you said before, if God wanted a robot, he would have created a robot.
Right.
But he created a person with a free will.
Yeah, free will.
But you know, I like what you said. You know, because people say, oh, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Eve. You know, and it's like you were saying, we're exactly like that.
Yeah.
You know, we're selfish, and we're gonna do what we want to do, regardless of what happens with other people. Think about during the pandemic. This sticks out.
Oh yeah.
And the lack of the problem with baby formula.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, the shortage.
The shortage.
Think about this.
There was
toilet paper. Remember with the toilet paper? Now, what shocked me when I saw in the news a whole video of this mom that went into the store with her little shopping cart and emptied the whole shelf and put it in her cart.
Of baby formula?
And there was a mom right behind her saying, lady, you're going to take all of it? You're not going to leave anything for my baby?
Wow.
And she said, well, that's not my problem. Can you imagine that?
Oh, my God.
And I'm thinking, okay, there you go, Eve.
Yeah. Oh my God.
In the year 2020, you're back.
That nature that needs
back in business.
That needs that sanctification, and if you don't get it, man, you can be real dirty.
I was like, unbelievable.
That's so bad.
And then during the
Like, that's so bad.
pandemic with the toilet paper.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
and Serge and I too, we were like, what's the deal with the toilet paper? Like, does everybody have like uncontrollable issues now just because of COVID? Like, what is the connection? And it's just like that nature that's like, I gotta get mine, me.
And that's your problem.
And
you don't get it. I don't care.
These choices that people make,
people have choices,
then affect other people around them.
Yeah.
And it's like, not like the Lord was causing the shortage of toilet paper to punish us for getting COVID, whatever people.
Yeah.
But that's a great example of like how people's decisions, like do
affects everyone else
around them, and it's so interesting how that happens and how that process is out, and how it's like your choice matters for you directly, for your family directly, but then when everybody starts making those choices, it affects like the world around them,
and I think that's the typology point of these two trees in the garden. That God was saying, if you choose to live simply for self, based on your own desire, your own opinion, to just serve self, then it's going to lead to death.
Right.
It's going to lead to chaos. It's not going to produce a beautiful life. But if you live and you depend on me, you let me lead you, you let me guide you, you let me be your God, then that's going to lead to life. Because it's going to lead to an entirely different mindset.
That's right.
And I think that, back to the subject, why are little children starving? Why doesn't God do something about it? Because it's not up to God. It's up to us. We are in charge when it comes to this earth. And those of us who love God and who are committed to serving God and following Him, we are trying to do something. Everyone in their own little sphere is trying to do something to improve life here on earth. But yet the culture, especially the secular culture, is just driven to complete selfishness.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if I have to destroy you, as long as I get what I want.
Right.
And that's basically going back to the same choice that Adam and Eve made.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think too, like, it's like from the beginning of time that when God set up these two systems, life or basically good and evil. You know what I'm saying? Like those two systems. Like to me, no matter what, whether you're a Christian or not, no matter, even if you like follow a different religion, like you always have those two choices. Like,
exactly.
They're
universal.
Right, exactly. There's these universal decisions and these universal truths that apply. And whenever an individual makes a decision, it sets in motion other motions, and
absolutely.
there are consequences. There are things that happen because of a decision, whether it's life or bad, good or bad.
Exactly.
And then that motion then affects the person next to them or the person around them, or
ripple effect.
And so I think like, the biggest thing for me, the takeaway, like in talking about this, is saying, okay, I can't control the universe around me. In reality, not even God is controlling the world around me. He
set up systems.
Exactly. I'm in control of my life.
Exactly.
I'm in control of teaching my children how to make these right decisions.
Exactly.
Hey, every decision you make is going to have a good thing or a bad thing that's going to come of it. And then kind of like what we talked about in the last episode is reminding myself that at the core of all of the chaos that does go on around me, that I do have God operating on my side.
Exactly.
Even when these natural processes of life that might come to me because of something else.
Exactly.
That might bring good or bad. there is a God that I have in my life.
That's right.
That will bring that good and bring that good to life.
Yeah.
And
well, a lot of people can misunderstand what we're saying because we're still saying those of us who believe in God still depend on God.
Exactly.
It's not like, okay, I'm totally in control and I disregard God.
Exactly.
No, because that's secular worldview. But my Christian worldview says God has given me the power to choose.
Exactly. Right.
But I still want to live a life in relationship with God.
Yeah, to help be a part of those choices.
To be a part of those choices and guide me.
To help me. Yeah, because I'm not always going to want to make the right choice.
Exactly.
You know.
So God has set up, because then people say, okay, well then, what did God do? He created the world and then went on vacation and,
I'm done here.
Sitting over there relaxing, and it's
what a pointless creation then.
Yeah, people say, well, why can't I pray and tell God, give me a job, and it's kind of like, yeah, you can pray and ask God to give you a job, but God's gonna tell you go find a job.
Right. Yeah.
Go move. Yeah. Go put your resume out. Because there are systems in place.
Yeah.
And the Bible talks about these systems in Genesis chapter 8 verses 22. Mm-hmm. God said, as long as the world remains.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's for a long time.
Yeah. We're still doing it.
These systems.
Yes.
Remain.
Yeah.
Day and night.
Right.
The sun and the moon. The cold and the hot. The winter and the summer. And the seed time and harvest.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So God says, yes, I rule the world.
Right.
Because I set up the systems for the world to function.
Right.
But now I'm not going to make the choice for you.
Right.
To decide on what system you're going to live.
That's so good. Yeah.
And what system you're going to function.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, there too, because I think with everything there's always a need for a good balance, because we do have to allow that God part to work in our lives, that's beyond our ability.
Right.
But then we do have to do our part of being like a good steward of our life, and doing our part. And, when you were talking about the job, my husband, Serge, he's been looking for a new job.
Yeah.
And, there was, it's been very taxing, very, just very difficult, because he's looking to make a change, you know, so it's a little harder.
Stressful, yeah.
And so long story short, there was, he's putting out resume and just gone through all these interviews, and it's like, you think, oh, maybe this is the one, and then it's like, no, we went with someone else or whatever.
It's like a roller coaster.
Am I not good enough,
Right.
And so I've just been trying to encourage him in this, and there was one time that I was like, babe, all you can do is do your part.
Yeah, exactly.
And he even looked at me, and I was like, God will do the rest. And he looked at me, and he was like, but how much is God really involved in this? He asked me that.
Hey, that's a good question.
How much is God really doing here? Is God telling these people to hire me and not hire me? And I was like, he was just having such a hard time. And I totally get it. And I'm like, that's so real. Right. And I told him, I was like, honestly, I don't really know. I was like, but I do know that God does work. That God is working for us, that God is working for you. And, and it's like, he's in this process right now, and we're just, we're both like, we're praying and trusting.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
We know that we do our part.
Yeah.
I'm not really doing much, but, you do your part, and God has to do his part.
Absolutely.
Whatever that part is, we're not really even fully sure.
Yeah.
But you do your part and trust, that God. And then I told him that, and he was like, "Well, thank you for your faith. I'm gonna jump on your faith because I don't really feel that.
I'm gonna hitch onto yours.
I really appreciate your faith right now."
Well, it's like I always say, if you cooperate, God will operate.
That's right.
I think that we do what we're supposed to do.
That's right. Yeah.
But then God will do what He can only do.
Yes.
And if that's a good fit for Sergio, then God's going to work in the hearts of those people.
Yeah, exactly.
That they're going to see the strength. They're going to see how this guy is a good fit for this company. So, you know, God will work in their hearts and in their minds to be able to come along. So that's something that nobody can do.
Right.
Only God can do that kind of thing.
Right.
You know, because he's able to get into people's hearts and have an influence there.
But all that to say, there's that God element that comes into play, but then there's our choices element that come into play.
And I think it's a partnership.
Yes, it is. It totally is.
Yeah. So anyhow, this is a big question.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we brought some clarity, though. I really do.
We brought you some things for you to think about and for you to, you know, process. But the bottom line is God is good.
That's right.
And he intends only good for you. Yeah. And, you know, the world has been given delegated authority to mankind, and man is the one that messes things up.
Yeah.
And you know, but if you put your trust in God, God will make a way for you to be able to rise above the circumstances of this world, because that's what faith is all about. Anyhow, thank you for being here at The Drop with us. What else can we tell them? Come on,
you can
share it.
Yeah,
share it with somebody.
Share the episode with a friend. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And on Apple Podcasts, if you're not following, click those little 3 dots that you see up there on, I think it's the top right, and just make sure you're following us. You know, that way you can get the updates every single week.
Absolutely.
And we thank you guys for being here and just being a part of our listeners, our watchers, and just continue to help us grow by sharing with friends and family and all of that. So we'll see you guys here next week
at The Drop.